Hello and welcome to the Relationship Breakthrough Show from Aligned with Love. I'm Matt.
And I am Rebecca. This is the place for people to have a magical, loving, intimate relationship.
Thanks for joining us. Now let's get started.
Today I've got this amazing lady, and beautiful by the way, outside and also inside, very spiritual, very owning her own stuff. She's being in her own personal transformation. So she is what I called a high quality woman with high standards for herself. This is the people that I like to be with, and she is such an amazing speaker for us to listen to today. I'm so excited. She's going to share with us how to take someone who has lost her business, her dog, her ex-partner, perhaps a child, perhaps moving countries. She's all about loss and personal transformation, going to losing something to winning something. She's going to tell us all about that. She's a life coaching transformator. She transforms people's lives. And she has worked with top leaders in the industry of personal development and well-known speakers. She's worked for Tony Robbins, and she's worked with Les Browns, Bob Proctor, Joy Dispenza, and I'm very pleased to have her here with us today. I'm very excited. Welcome, Mastanee Ati.
Wow, what a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Rebecca. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this.
You're very welcome. I love you to share with us your personal story, how you ended up doing what you're doing and being here with me right now.
That's a beautiful question. So it started my personal growth journey started it actually when I was 19, and I started reading the book of Dr. Wayne Dyer. And since then, I was a lot of things transformed because in that time I was quite low point in my life. And therefore, I realized what a difference it makes to start investing in your mindset. And later on along the journey, I studied architecture in the past, and from there, and then from there, it didn't work out. I was again in a different, let's say, phase of my life where I felt like I didn't want to do that anymore, and I wanted to get more into my passion, meaning that making a difference in people's lives. I wasn't really sure yet how that exactly was going to look like. I was always, since I was a child, I always had this dream. I want to make a difference in people's lives. I want to stop actually the suffer in the world, see people smiling, more joyful and more loving, to create a more loving place for everyone. And therefore, I was at the same time, I was very curious, and I was mostly very observant in life. Like I was more the quiet person. A lot of people, when they see me, they think I'm this extroverted person, but actually I've been always more the quiet person, always
Sounds
observing.
familiar.
Yes, always observing, always asking questions, trying to understand why people do what they do. And
Mm.
so in 2012, I moved to from the Netherlands to UK in London.
Mm.
And of course, there's a story into that as well, how everything happened. But shortly said, I moved to London because I wanted to follow actually my mission. And I felt like what it was, but I wasn't 100% fully sure yet what it was. But I felt like I wanted to make a difference. It was very important to me. I felt like I'm here for a calling, and not just to live my life and have just do a job and do something in those lines. Like I really felt like there is a calling for me. It was so much deep in my spirit that I felt like I'm here to make a difference. And therefore I started to feel drawn towards the personal development industries. And one of them was the Tony Robbins organization. And when I came to I didn't know how, but I wanted to work with one of those organizations. But I think I made my luck by just being very good with people and connecting with people because my English wasn't very well and I didn't have really any full-on experience there. But
Sounds
one,
familiar.
yes. So, and I knew that I had to go through people, so I'm good with people, so let me just make my luck there.
Mhm,
And that helped me to come and work with Tony Robbins organization.
mhm,
And as you mentioned and shared here as well, very beautifully, I've been working alongside so many amazing, great-minded people. And when you do that for 7, 8 years, you're like a sponge. You have no other choice than wanting to get out and do the same and make a difference yourself. Therefore, I started working as a transformational coach and making a difference and coaching as well. So that's a little bit surely said about my journey. But of course, I had to overcome a lot of challenges as well. And
That's right.
yes, which we're definitely going to talk about in regards to grief. So,
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. Tell me
Yeah.
about the grief that you have to go through to navigate, to go through, because people think that they can go out of it, like you can get out of a relationship that is being painful or challenging, but the only way out is through. So tell me about your way through that grieving process. I'm curious, what happened there?
Sure. So, like everyone, we all have been in relationships, and most of
Mhm.
us, I think almost everyone here has had to go through it. Some point in their life, we had to go through grief. And in my personal experience, it was more like the first times that I started to grieve, it was so much more intense. And I was really, like you could say, traumatized by my past relationships. And therefore, I that really challenged me and made me think like it just it I had still while I was going through the pain and the challenging emotional experience, I'll call it that way. I don't want to call it and label it like I was really suffering because in some ways somehow it felt like I was disappointed, I was hurted in my experiences. But there was always a part in me and that always said that it doesn't have to be this way. And there is always a way of doing better, as in taking more care of myself and not playing the victim, as in being in the blame mode, but taking charge of my life and being responsible of my life. So that was the drive for me to start understanding more about, okay, what is grief? So I got really curious because of that. And all I was doing was like learning, studying, going on YouTube, reading books, trying to understand the whole process of grief and pain and emotional management, self-care, self-love, rejection, and all those kind of things. And therefore, since that was part of my journey, I started to learn and get tools and understand better. So when I went from the to the next, let's say, relationship, and I had to and we broke up there, I realized that it was getting every time a little bit, let's say I was managing it a little bit better. I don't want to say necessarily the one was better, it became always easier, but I managed it better in that sense. And I because I had more tools. And this is how I realized that grief isn't always about, yes, it happens in some way, somehow to us, the breakup in some ways, but at the same time, we are in charge how we manage it and we can soften it. We can't maybe, let's say, oh, tomorrow I just want it to go away. No, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
But how
Right.
it does work is I would like to soften the process, make it easier, make it a
Mm.
little bit faster instead of extending it longer.
Yes.
The grief process. Have some extra tools, something that helps me to get some hope and those kind of things. So I do, and from experience, I realized that all this was possible. And when I was working with my clients, when they also went through grief, and I could see that where people get sometimes stuck and what it takes, the mindset, certain rituals. There's so much more that comes with it. So yeah, I think I really believe that we can have an influence on this process. And just by
Right.
knowing that gives also sort of like a focus, some hope. And yeah, and I love to get
That's right.
yes.
So for those who are listening to us, how would you describe grief if they don't really know what that is? And also, what are some common emotional, physical, behavioral symptoms of that so people can recognize it after a breakup? A breakup could be with your partner. It could also be with your country, as you and me have moved countries. That could be also a breakup, particularly when you you leave your country, running away from what happened, certain people, and actually later on you realize that you cannot run away from people or your country. You're gonna have to take yourself to whichever countries you are, and you're taking your son with yourself, and you're gonna have to eventually face it. So tell me about this. What is grief? What are the symptoms?
Yeah. Grief is more about something that we have to learn to let go of. And because we have a certain desire. When we have desire about something, and that could be a person, or it could be something that we are, I see it in this way, like when we are programmed to have certain experiences with certain people or certain countries or something, like could be even a job or something along those lines, because we have those memories, and those memories creates a certain self-identity, and we have certain ways of responding to that, and that becomes part of our lifestyle. And when it's not there anymore, or when that person, or that maybe a pet, maybe an animal, it could be also animal that we grieve about, is not there anymore, we feel like all our routine and memories, that the way we were living our lives has suddenly changed. We have to suddenly, like, it's not there anymore. Obviously, grieving a job might be a little bit different than grieving a person, because when we talk about a person, and let's say someone in a relationship, that is more like you had some hope, as in vision, as in your life was going ahead to, and that was part of your identity, and you were
Mhm.
experiencing a person. You had some emotional attachment there. You had some joy, and maybe not joy, but you there is definitely some emotional attachment there. And when it's not there anymore, it's of course very hard, because we feel disconnected, and we're not in a place of receiving that love and that dynamic anymore. And usually we're not grieving necessarily about the person itself. We're grieving because about of that connection is not there anymore. It's most of the time the connection that we experienced. So therefore, we have to start learning, like, oh, a lot of things are changing right now. We have to find our new way, our new path. And sometimes that can be really hard, because we have to let go of something that we believed in, and something that we wanted it for a long time, for our future. And
That's right.
depending, of course, what's if it's a person, if you come out of a marriage, if you were maybe a short time with a person, what level of attachment you had there as well. So there are a lot of different factors that plays with it as well. But eventually, grief comes all down to just the idea that that connection with the memories and the experiences are not there anymore.
Ah,
That we so
wow.
yeah.
I love what you're saying. It's fascinating. One day I found myself, maybe 13 years ago, crying in the plane when I was coming to London for the first time, and I left Spain. And I was crying, and I was thinking, wait a second, why am I crying? I mean, I was missing certain people that I loved a lot from my family. And then I thought, but why am I grieving? I couldn't wait to get rid of them. And so I realized that actually I was grieving for the dream of the people, family members that I wish I had had, but that I never had. So I was grieving an illusion of family members that I never had. And that's why I was crying so much in the plane. So how insane is that? So can you grieve a connection with certain people that actually was not healthy?
You can definitely grieve that, because the body doesn't, and the memories doesn't really know the logic of, it is good or not good. All it knows is it had an attachment towards it. And
That's
we
correct.
had memories with it, and that has been um, part of our experiences. And if that is something, and most of the time, even if you didn't have a good relationship with that person, you might still have loved that person.
That's right.
And even if you didn't love that person, you might still have loved the illusion of it.
Mhm.
Or you might have had some experiences there that's all you knew. So
Mhm.
it still comes down to like big changes, like from that experience to a totally like, okay, who am I now? Like I'm now here living a very different life, no idea who I am without that person. Now I have to rediscover myself. So it's also about grieving all that, where it's still an identity we were carrying with ourselves, still memories.
That's right. So are we grieving what's familiar, whether that was healthy or not, good for us or bad for us? We're grieving what was familiar for us,
Yeah,
right? And now it's not there anymore. And now we find ourselves in a new ground and it's uncertain.
yeah,
And we need to readapt ourselves and maybe, like you're saying, reinvent ourselves, create a new identity because the old identity is gone.
yeah.
And that transition time could feel really challenging, and that's what the grieving period is. Is that correct?
Yes, that is totally correct. Yes.
Mhm. So would you say that grieving, do you think that men and women grieve in the same way or not, or they should do it different way? Because some I understand that when we grieve, we need to release the emotions that are in the body, stored in the body, and that may involve to cry and to talk about our feelings. And I know because I work with a lot of men that men don't like to do that because they say that is not manly. However, there are a lot of men who are lovely and sensitive, and then there are some other men who are more um, focused on thinking and doing things, but not so much on feeling and talking, expressing their feelings. So, what do you think about this? Do men and women grieve differently, or what would you say
Yes.
about this?
The you made definitely some good points there, and there's definitely some good truth in there as well. Indeed, men and women do grieve, not like black and white. This is not black and white, as you said as well. And but in general, we can speak that men and women deal with emotions differently, because grief is still going through a sort of like emotional phase where you're not in a good space. And with men, and the difference between a woman and man is a woman, she can go easily to her friends, talk a lot about it, express a lot, and be more connected with her emotions
Mhm,
in general. Of course, not
mhm,
this is not black and white. It's not for everyone,
mhm,
but most women.
mhm.
And then
Yes.
a lot of men
Mhm,
might handle it very much differently. Is they are not going close, like connecting with their emotions and expressing it, but what they do instead is doing the practical things. What I
mhm,
mean with that is they focus on their work. They focus on make something else that is practical. That could be like sport, fitness. They could just create, maybe go even in another relationship. It's still something practical where they can just do something else without facing their real emotions and being with that. So that is something more what a man could be and tend to reach out for faster. And sometimes, having said that, still men do it silently within themselves without expressing it. They feel
uh-huh,
the emotions, they still feel it, but they do it within themselves. And
mhm,
as you said it very beautifully, or as you shared it there, it's harder for them to express it because it's still like, hey, I'm a man. This is not what the society is expecting from me, and
yes.
I'm supposed to look strong in this moment. and just get on with it. And I'm not going to face this, and I'm just going to go on with it. Therefore, obviously, all this has consequences as well.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about, of course, but that's a difference between man and woman. And I think what I have seen also personally with a woman, they go through a grieving process. They go very hard, like it's stronger, and but they go through the emotions, they experience it full on, and then they move on. And then once they move on, like with the next stage of their life,
Totally, I know.
it's more released and it's more they pass that stage more, to call it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
with men, because they are jumping into work, something more practical, something like that, they keep carrying it then with themselves. And therefore, because you carry it with yourself, you might suddenly, after 2 years, 3 years, when you're, let's say, had a breakup suddenly with this new person or job, or you finish your job, and suddenly you're facing your emotions and you're in silence, or something happens along the line, or you see something that triggers you, suddenly you can start going back to those emotions again that you haven't faced fully yet. And having said that, saying that men, also women can do that, of course. So also women can sometimes, I've seen also women, of course, they're going all the way into their job and they're trying to ignore it, just push it on
That's
the
right.
side and
Yes.
move on with it. But this is more general speaking, obviously, men and
Yeah,
women.
that's right. Understand.
I
Mm-hmm.
think everyone is going through their own grieving process. And because grieving is not just one way, everyone grieves differently.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we think we have been grieving and then we don't grieve and then suddenly we are grieving again. If someone had, let's say, miscarriage and she goes and back to work, if she feels like this is her way of dealing with it, that's great. Go back to work. But and there is a little but there. When you go to work at the same time, I always believe that be also very honest with yourself, as in what you really think about something, how you really feel about something. And when we face those thoughts and emotions, and if you feel like the real truth is that you are actually hurt and you do feel some sadness there, and then I would say, and this is just almost scientific, like in a sense of like, if you really take the time to release all those emotions, that's when we are not holding on into it and it doesn't become like stuck emotions inside of our bodies that even can turn into things like cancer. I also heard about those things and so those things as
Exactly.
well. Literally, when we have stuck emotions, we're holding on into certain emotions and we're holding on that in our body. Not even necessarily cancer. It can happen somewhere in your shoulders, in your back pain, in your knee pain, or it can go,
Mm-hmm.
it can just literally get
Mm-hmm.
stuck in your emotions. There's a beauty about vulnerability and crying. And when it happens that certain people that fear crying. They don't want to cry because they see it as, if I'm going to cry, I'm going to get worse. It's going to get worse. If I'm going to cry, that's not something good. And there are some beliefs there, but this is going to work against us. Because when you cry, what you're actually doing is you're actually serving your mental, emotional, physical well-being. Crying is a good thing. And you have to trust that this crying will end. You have to allow yourself to cry, to release all those tears, because that's natural. That is a natural process. Having said that, I'm not saying that go and cry maybe for, I mean, there's no judgment either for that. But having said that, also, it's not like I'm gonna stay stuck in a loop where I'm gonna cry, keep crying for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Because in that loop that you're in it, you can also break that loop at the same time as well. Because sometimes we are stuck in certain stories, and those stories create a certain emotion, and the emotion we keep going through that cycle. What I'm really trying that, because that's a little bit different. What I'm trying to say here is release what is still there. Allow yourself, give yourself some time. And having shared this, It just reminds me of the time that my mother passed away and how I dealt with it. And I don't think that love relationship and grief with a mother is necessarily much different because it still comes down to losing someone. And there are some similarities there for sure. How I dealt with it was that I gave myself literally, I told myself, and this worked for me personally well. It might not resonate with everyone here, but for me, it resonated very well and it worked very well. Is I told myself, I'm going to spend the next 4 weeks' time to just be, to cry, to grieve, whatever that means, to just eat whatever I feel like, if I feel like. If I want to eat healthy, great. If I want to, whatever my body's telling me it needs, I'm just going to allow it to just be and be there and feel those emotions. Was it tough? For sure, it was tough. But was it eventually serving me? It did. Because I told myself the next 4 weeks I'm going to do that. And then after 4 weeks, when I allowed myself to do that, at the same time, I told myself after 4 weeks, I'm going to start rebuilding myself going up again. And meaning that, and that was actually January. Funny enough, that was 2023, January, I believe. So from head, yes, 2023, January. That was the moment that I said, from now on, I'm going to just turn this around and take little bit by little bit steps to just take more care of myself, nourish myself more, start getting more into the future instead of into the past, allow myself to just do more things that are going to serve me more in different ways, like the practical things and those kind of things without forcing it, but taking the time to just go up, as in that sense. And because I, in my mind, was like the next four weeks I'm going to do that, that gave me hope. And at the same time, it gave me space to really grieve. And it still empowered me that I'm not going to stay stuck there in my tears because I trust myself if I'm going to say the next 4 weeks, January the 1st, then I'm going to do that. And I did. But this was my personal experience.
What would you say to someone listening to us now and thinking, well, I can't afford doing that because I have children, I have a house to run, I have a job, my emails, my partner, or my partner is not supporting me to do that. So how can I grieve?
Grief is not always about not doing anything. You can also grieve and still connect with your emotions while you're still doing things. I also believe in that as well. I think when you are working, you can still just allow yourself to feel those emotions while you're doing some work, while you're doing the things, while you're also, but most importantly, non-judgmental, can be very gentle with yourself in that process. And in the evening when you come home and you're maybe before your sleeping time, if you feel like crying, maybe that's the moment for you. And that's the moment you're going to cry. If you feel like you want to cry somewhere, you're in on a street, if you feel like you're safe to do that, you can cry. If you want to do that, maybe in nature and just because there's no other environment there for you, you're just going to walk somewhere where you feel like there's no one there and you can just allow yourself to cry, you do that. And the key is about listening to what you feel and give yourself moments where you can allow yourself to just express and feel. And it doesn't have to be only crying, it could be also talking about it. It could be with it,
Writing about it?
writing about it, journaling about it, of course, talking about it. You could speak with your friend about it. You could speak with a coach. You could speak with a therapist. You could um, nowadays even just use ChatGPT. How weird that sounds.
That is right. They're amazing.
Even I sometimes do that. And you could take time watching a YouTube video about grief. You could whatever you feel like resonates in that moment with you. The key is also to listen to yourself, what you need, and trying to give that to you, and also trusting your intuition along this process because we are thinking that, oh, it has to be this way, it has to be this way. It's not always logical. Sometimes we just have to feel and tune into our body. What does it need? What do I need in this moment? What can I do in this moment? How does it work for me? And allow your intuition just to speak and do that, whatever that means. Because I can share whatever I want to share here. Any guru or whoever that wants to share here anything, I don't think anything's more powerful than you trusting what you need and giving that to yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's part of.
However, some people don't know whether they can trust their feelings or not. They have a lot of self-doubt.
That's okay. Therefore, it's good to speak with someone that is more experienced in
That's
that
right.
field.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am also I have something that comes to my mind. How powerful is grieving by not doing anything, as you said, as opposed to doing something? Like, can be as deep the grieving um, when you are just lying in yourself, like I call it dying in your bed, which I love, so whenever it's required, and allowing your feelings to flow and you are feeling safe being in your bed, or actually, let's say, being at work, I'm a manager, I'm going back to work, and I'm very busy. I need to deal with complaints with my team, blah, 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 and customers, and at the same time, I'm grieving. What's the difference? Is it the same?
I think when we are keeping ourselves very busy,
Mhm.
we are still in some way somehow ignoring what we are actually really feeling and allowing ourselves to fully grieve. I'm not saying that this is always possible for everyone, of course. If you have to work, you have
Yeah,
to work,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
But obviously it doesn't have to. It can have still some consequences when you do that.
Mhm.
When you're going to work and you're very busy in that way, and if you feel like that works for you, great. If it works for you, great. Um, but at the same time, the key is to understand why you do what you do. And what I mean with that is that if you're going to work because you're trying to ignore and push something away, that's different than I'm going to work and I'm still going to face what I'm feeling and I'm connected with my emotions and I'm doing still some emotional regulation there and taking care of it while I'm working as well. So I think that
Mhm.
how is also really important. It's not always
That's
like
right.
there is a good or a wrong answer here. So
I love that. Yeah, exactly. That's the nitty-gritty that I wanted to hear. Yes. How about the natural consequences that you mentioned before, Mastani, about grieving uh, and also about not grieving?
I think everyone grieves in some way, somehow anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but we do it in a way that some people, it doesn't look like grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And because sometimes we think that because someone doesn't cry doesn't mean that they're not grieving necessarily. And
Uh-huh.
you can still feel in your way
Mm-hmm.
some uncomfort or something whatever that is for you. Maybe it's you're feeling some something like numbed or whatever you're going through. I think that we the key is not try to label everything so much in
Mm-hmm.
that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. So I think that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. So if people don't grieve,
Mhm.
what would be the challenges that they're gonna face?
When you don't fully grieve, when you don't allow
Mm-hmm.
yourself fully to
Or
feel,
at all, really?
as as mentioned indeed before, is that you can have some more stuck emotions. You can
All
feel it more
right.
into your body. You might
Mm-hmm.
face it suddenly after if you don't grieve, and that would mean that you're going to work and you're going into the next relationship and you're just going to ignore it. There is a chance that suddenly when you are faced to be on your own, that all this stuff can pop up suddenly
Mm-hmm.
and you can start to grieve suddenly or not only that but also while you're doing the work you're still carrying some baggage there without realizing it.
That's
You're not
right.
fully living your full potential and best self. There is still some stuff there that is stuck there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because you haven't taken the time to really recover, to heal, and to really release the emotions and to be in order to be in a very good space.
Hmm.
And
That's right.
another consequence could be also that because we're grieving, we make different choices, practical
Hmm.
choices. We might not do our work maybe fully in the best way. We might not choose always the best partners while we're grieving because we are more in a place of need. We are more in a place of different experiences that we're experiencing in that moment. Um,
Hmm.
so it has consequences in that sense as well.
That's right. You know what I see time and time again is that, well, in my relationship with couples, is that people have some, as you know, as a coach, we can have misbeliefs about things. And when we come to terms, just like a little toddler learns that if they have as much ice cream as they want to, they're going to have tummy ache, or actually they can't do that because their parents are not going to allow them to do that, and they can have a tantrum and they can keep crying and crying for hours until they're tired of crying, and eventually they accept it, you know. And so that's grieving, realizing that things are not as you thought that you as you thought they were or they would be. So it happens in couples a lot when they realize that actually maybe my partner is not like me. Maybe my partner is different. My partner has a different style, different values, different needs. Maybe my partner is not gonna be the friend that I'm gonna spend hours and hours chatting, or maybe my partner is not that person that shares as much as I share, or not so family oriented as I can be, and just letting go those beliefs and assumptions, I would say, can be such a dramatic grief that we need to go through and to go to the next level of our relationship. But then some people actually are going through a breakup, relationship breakup.
Mm.
So, because it's too late, because they made it too late, they decided to just brush things under the carpet, and eventually they just decide that they're too tired of being tired. They just call it a day. So, tell me about different reasons why people go through breakups. Tell me what would be the typical symptoms that people go through after a relationship breakup, because that's massive in our work.
Yeah, yeah. One of the common things that we experience, and for everyone, it's maybe a little bit different, of course, but in general
Mhm.
speaking, I would say something that especially from my personal experience, I know is that after I break up, I feel some tense there inside of me, like literally the physical, there's this feeling in my stomach there. And that's one of the feelings that we can definitely experience. And I'm sure a lot of people resonate with it when, especially if you're more self-aware and we tap into how we really feel and where we feel those emotions, we can feel that there is some tense feeling there. That's this. It's like almost you carry that every day with you until we are really been grieving and we are recovered a little bit more from it. So that tense feeling that's one of the things that you feel there. Another symptom is that we might grab towards things that could numb us, and numbing as in we might grab maybe food. We might grab something like, in some cases, alcohol. The extreme cases, maybe drugs or something. But it could be also just watching television. It could be watching porn. It could be doing something really like obsessively in a sense of like maybe extreme sports or extreme something or something to just not try to feel and just to make sure you feel a little bit okay about yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
And that could be one of the symptoms after grief. Another
Mm-hmm.
symptom could be not sleeping well,
Yes.
and which is a huge one. And especially we grieve more before we want, but when we're laying down and everything is quiet, we're not working anymore. Just before bedtime, we put our head on a pillow and we start to suddenly reflect and our mind is taking over. And we start to go through all those scenarios or thoughts or feelings, whatever it is. And maybe we start to even cry or feel anger or any emotion there in that sense. And that could be happening as well. Um, that's another thing. Then I think those are
How are, how are losing your identity, sorry, Mastani, because you mentioned that in a previous conversation. And actually, I was telling you about these beliefs that we need to come to terms with, these assumptions that we make about our partners, our relationship, how they should be, how they are not going to be, because we realize, and then we realize that actually that's not going to be anymore. It's not going to happen. Would you say that's a loss of identity because we lose the identity that we had constructed about our relationship or about us in the relationship or our partner, and now we need to create a new one?
if you have to grieve our identity, you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing is that when we had for a long time, we believed that this was part of our identity, that it's not there anymore, that we have to recreate a new identity for ourselves. What does it mean for me to not have that person in my life anymore? How does my new self look like? How does my new rituals look like? You might even lose some friendships because they were part of your partner's friendships. Like maybe the family of your partner, you are also grieving them. It's not just and only sometimes the person. You're
That's
you're maybe also grieving certain routines in life.
that's right.
You
Mm-hmm.
did certain things together. You spoke about certain things. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're grieving. It's not always that we are grieving necessarily the person itself. It's really
That's
that
right.
we are grieving the experiences, the connections, the attachments that we had.
I love
That's
that.
what we're really
Yeah.
grieving. And I think
Yeah.
actually this is a good thing to realize for ourselves that it's not necessarily the person we're grieving. It's the emotions we got from that experience that we're grieving. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're understanding it more in depth, then you can look more into what it is as it is without labeling it towards the person itself. Because then you can understand that, oh, that was something I really enjoyed. It was the experiences that we had, the rituals, the feeling loved. I felt loved. That was part of my identity.
That's
Um,
right.
and that's what I'm actually really grieving because now I'm not experiencing those things anymore. And then
Mm-hmm.
that comes with asking ourselves good questions. Okay, how can I replace that in a healthier way for myself to create this beautiful new identity where I can still meet my own needs? A sense of love and connection, a sense of new routine, a sense of new friendships, whatever you had with your past experiences with that person. And how can you recreate those new experiences? And that will become eventually, with time, part of your new identity, which I still don't believe as in we have to stay stuck in a certain identity and we call everything an identity because otherwise we feel like if we lose an identity, we lose ourselves. So that's why I'm also not really a big fan of the word identity in that sense.
Uh-huh.
Um, but still, I think you can ask yourself, what new experiences would I like to gain with this new lifestyle without that person? And so you have to ask yourself again, like, oh, what do I actually really love in this moment? And how does it really look like? So all those questions will come with it. And that will be part of your new lifestyle, your new way of living, your new way of looking at life and experiencing everything. And which we can call, of course, a sort of like an identity in that sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's been an amazing conversation, Mastani. I loved it so much. I definitely, my biggest nugget here is that grieving doesn't necessarily has to be that we're grieving our partner, but we may be grieving the life that we had with them, the house, the routines, like you said,
Right.
the benefits that we had from that relationship, not just the person. Would like you to share how people can actually contact you if they want to work with you, if they want to ask you some questions, and book a session with you or enroll in your programs, or how can people contact you?
They can go on my website. That's
Mhm.
one way. And that
Which
is
is the name?
Mastanee.
Mhm.
It's my name. And then coaching.com. mastaneecoaching.com. And they can also look me up. I'm on social media as well, Mastanee Ati.
Mhm.
You can find me there as well. And I love to also offer for everyone as well that is listening as well. I like to offer them also a nice meditation.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a nice meditation. I used to work with when I worked with clients, I always did a meditation. And every time when I asked them what transformed you the most, they said it was the meditation.
Mhm.
So, and this is something that I would love, of course, for everyone that is listening here to also offer them a meditation. And they can go to mastaneecoaching.com/meditations. They can download it there.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much for being so generous with our lovely audience. And thank you for sharing with us your precious time, expertise, personal experience, and challenges.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca. I really enjoyed this. And yeah, I'm looking forward, who knows, to our next. Yes.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, that's all for today. Thanks again for joining us, and please remember to subscribe and to leave us a review.
Who could you share this episode with that needs to hear this message?
Share this episode and remember that the quality of your relationship determines the quality of your life.
See you on the next episode.